place, what will happen then? What can be positive or negative effects? Free travel of people, yes or no?
Well, I'm inclined to be optimistic. I have to be. I voted to remain, but I was very clear with my constituents that I would consider myself to be bound by the result. And so that's that. We're going to leave. And therefore, I'm inclined to see the better of what could come. In my view, if we do as we say, and we go off and we secure free trade agreements with countries way beyond the EU, and the UK and the EU realise that it is in our mutual interest to have a tariff-free trading agreement within Europe as well, I think that positions the UK not only geographically, culturally, but also in terms of international trade, right at the centre of the world, which for the UK is a huge opportunity for attracting major events so that those events can come, because the point about market access earlier on was well made. Now, European cities will see that differently. They will see this as an opportunity to take business away from London and the UK provincial cities. But so what? That is competition, and long may it continue.
One of the gentlemen, because you are the ones actually...
No, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. I mean, when you said, well, but this is speaking what the media speaks, but Brexit, we don't know what Brexit... We know that Brexit will be there and that there will be a form of cessation from the Union, but we don't know what that will entail. So the biggest question is, how is it going to be structured and what's going to happen then? If it's all...
But what's the worst that can happen and what's the best that can happen?
Oh, I guess.
For the meetings industry. In general, we're talking about meetings and events industry here. So what is the worst that can happen to meetings industry? Ian?
Massive queues at passport control. That'll kill you.
Yeah. That'll
kill me anyway.
That would kill UK meetings industry?
But I think the UK government would be crazy to create that situation. Yes. So they will have to negotiate in such a way that allows easy access into the UK without massive queues at Heathrow, Gatwick and all the other airports. And clearly the investment that's going on in Heathrow is not going to allow that to happen, I don't believe.
Okay. Ben, anything to add?
I think the other thing that will kill everything is if markets close. If markets get closed, if there isn't access to markets, if there isn't access to free trade in some form, what James describes is the best form for the UK is also the best form for everybody, of course. If you have trade is what we all live on. I mean, we all live on global trade. That's my personal opinion.
But wouldn't Barcelona hope for London to be behind the border so nobody wants to go there?
That's, I mean, the answer, I think, to your question about so what for the events industry is no change. All that will happen is that if the UK makes a mess of the Brexit deal, and we make it really difficult for you to come to the UK on business, we make it really difficult for you to access supply chains within the European Union, we'll just displace the events. The events will still happen. The events industry will still exist.
But maybe not in London.
It will just be elsewhere. It'll be in Amsterdam or here in Barcelona or in Frankfurt. So, of course, it's in the UK's interests to make ourselves as attractive as possible. Now, some of that is about how we navigate Brexit, but other things are about how we attract internationally significant events to the UK, what we do with our transport infrastructure, what we do with our venues. If we stop knocking them down in London to do housing and sort of left a few venues in central London for you to use. But how we do that will really decide whether you continue to come to the UK. But hey, if you're involved in organising events that could be easily run in London or Barcelona or Paris or Seoul, well, fine, you're still going to hold your event. It's just my job and the job of Visit Britain and the rest of us who stand up for the UK events industry to continue to persuade you that we're better than everybody else.
I think there's another interesting factor at play as well in the background, and that is the Trump factor.
Is the Trump factor more important than the Brexit factor?
Well, listen, I mean, the one good thing about the Trump factor is that when Brexit happened, Obama turned around and said, you're at the back of the queue, guys. And that dynamic has completely changed with Donald Trump, who's interested in progressing a trade agreement very, very quickly with the UK. That's a complete shift in balance. If that happens sooner rather than later, that's going to be a clear statement to the EU in terms of trade.
especially if TTIP fails. I mean, that's there are non-Brexit issues that are a real challenge for the EU at the moment. And so, we just continue to muddy the water, which doesn't help when you're trying to moderate a debate on Brexit. Sorry.
But by the way, I'm not a Trump fan. Just in case anybody's going to throw stuff at me later, I'm not a Trump fan. It was just seeing the positives.
Yeah, I would like to turn to the audience because there were some people raising their hands when I asked, "Do you feel that there will be an influence on the industry by Brexit?" Can I see those hands again? Who thinks that there will be an influence? There's only one left. You convinced everyone. Now a lot of people.
Okay.
Can I see the hands clearly raised, please? Yes. I will go for you, lady. I will throw you this one. No, the lady behind you, but I will be with you if you really want to. Can you catch it? Could you tell me what you think that the influence of Brexit on the industry will be?
Well, it's probably a lot of things we've discussed.
Could you keep it as close to your mouth as possible? It feels kind of weird, but...
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of things like the free markets, the sort of the cost to people of having their event in London compared to other places. So a lot of things we've discussed already in the panel. The cost of things like your suppliers, the supplier chains, getting guests to your event who are international and whether they're willing to travel and the costs to them and things like that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Anyone of the other hands have anything? Yes, the lady here. No. Throw it to me first. This is not fun. We have to throw it. Here we go. Thanks. I didn't bring it for nothing.
My feeling is a lot of the meetings events are fueled by the Americans and their a lot of these American events go through England as their portal to Europe for many reasons, one of which being language. Communication is facilitated by the fact so companies or agencies are going to agencies that are in London or in the UK, and then diversify and send them to other destinations.
Is your fear that American companies will no longer bring their meetings and events to Europe because they will be stopped at the English?
Legitimate concern.
Yeah.
It's one of the concerns that there could be. I mean, it's just that, yes, we'll adapt. We adapt. But before we adapt to a situation that's comfortable for everybody, there's going to be a point where it's a lot easier to fly through Paris to get to the rest of Europe than it is to go to London to get to the rest of Europe. And is that going to affect the decisions that our clients make in the United States?
Okay. Ben, your perspective from America?
That's a question. That's indeed a question. You can.
What do you think?
In terms of trend, you do see with our clients that it depends which side of the clientele you're talking about, but the UK is very often a first port of call. People like to go to the UK. Ireland is the other place they like to go to for the same reason, language reasons and the ease of access and the reason of connection to the past, because that's another one why people choose the UK. I think you could, if like I said before, if markets close, then it becomes a totally different thing. If ease of supply chain access changes with Brexit, that will have an effect. That definitely will have an effect, because people like to work with people that they have an easy relationship with. So that goes for the supply chain as well. And companies like your company and my company that's one of the reasons why we work the way we work. So
yeah, absolutely. Anyone else from the room? Yes, I will be with you next. First I go to this gentleman. Here we go.
Hi, I'm based in Sydney, and as an observation, I believe it's the time that it takes for you guys to sort each other out from both sides, that maybe the rest of the world will win some conferences that may not have happened because of your uncertainty.
I think that's a very, very reasonable point. I still think we're going to win on Saturday by at least 20 points. But no, I think I think that is a real point, and what's interesting, I think, if I can put, forgive me if I'm putting words into your mouth, but to the rest of the world outside the current EU, this is not a British problem, but a British and EU problem. And so it is in the mutual interest of London and Brussels to sort this out as quickly and as pragmatically as possible, because Sydney, the Aussies are not shy in coming forward when they think they've got a competitive edge. And I suspect right now you can probably put together a pretty compelling case for why take the risk on London in 2018, 2019. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Ben, you wanted to
Yeah,
add?
no, Ian said it earlier on. I think there are bigger things than Brexit happening at the moment in Europe, and I think Italy this week is going to be crucial to what's going to happen, and then the elections in France, and the elections in Holland, and the elections, I don't know where else they're having elections, Germany. It's going to be, but those are all big macro things that will affect us all, our daily lives,
Yeah. Okay. There was another remark here. Here you go. Yes, that side. Good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Stockholm, Sweden, and I think the key thing is the trade. And if if it would be a problem with the trade, I think you have a problem with the corporate meetings. And I think might be Germany, corporate meetings with Germany.
There seems
Sorry,
to be
we lost your question
a
there.
problem with the microphone. Could I get yours? Yes, thank you, Ben. I will throw this to you. Whoop. Could you do it one more time?
Yeah, I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden, and I think the trade is the key factor. And the trading between Sweden and UK is very, very important, but it's more important with Germany. And I think in the future we will have much more corporate meetings with Hamburg, Berlin than before, because London was one of the most important destinations before. So I think the trade is very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, I think we may see a change and a switch to slightly more meetings in Europe as a result of that, but so far we haven't seen that. And as we've just said before, I think the devaluing of the pound, I think it's something like 20% cheaper to come to the UK. I still think it remains an attractive destination with more competitive pricing, and that may remain for some time as far as the value of the pound is concerned, because it was probably overvalued in the first place.
Yeah. Sorry, once again, Ben.
But anyway, we have already seen in from Sweden now for next year more and more business to Germany, to Berlin and Hamburg for next year.
And then that's great. I look after EMEA, so I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah. For you, it makes no difference where the conference go. Probably to you, it does.
No, it makes a difference, but that would be a very quick turnaround if that was directly and solely a result of Brexit. Perhaps that's a reflection of wider market trends. I don't know. I would be very surprised if the UK-Scandinavian trading relationship did not remain very, very strong indeed.
Could we take a look in the crystal ball? And I know this is very hard, but if you take a look in 5 or 10 years' time, what do you think? Will meetings and events have suffered from Brexit? Will they have become stronger? What is your opinion, guys? Yes, you look like a crystal ball.
Sorry, just say the
watcher.
question again.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Just say the question again, sorry.
5 or 10 years' time, what will the meeting industry look like? Will it have suffered from Brexit or not?
I very much doubt it. I really doubt that in 5 to 10 years' time we will have a worse having suffered meetings industry than we've got now. That's not going to happen.
No? Okay.
I think the biggest thing in our meetings industry is the fact that meetings have become so important to economies. So people are realizing, James said it earlier, infrastructure is a key component of the meetings industry, and I think countries and locations and cities are still investing heavily into infrastructure. I think collectively the industry needs to do a lot about the importance of meetings and the importance of face-to-face. That's still growing. I think that has a bigger effect on the industry than Brexit itself. And Brexit, that's one of those things which will have an effect in certain areas. The point that was made about trade was the point that I tried to make earlier as well.
Yeah.
I mean, corporations, when corporate meetings happen, that's all to do with the market that they're serving. So it depends on where their headquarters are, where their focus is, where their, where trade is being happening, which market they want to access. Those are the decisions that really determine where one of those meetings goes. Yes, it's great that if it's a US corporation, if it's Dell or if it's Microsoft or whoever it is, that they can go to the UK because they speak the same language. But that's not the decision-making path that they have. It's all about, Germany is a huge market, France is a huge, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the decisions that are being made. So.
I mean, and globally, we may see a lot more happening in Asia Pacific as well. Yeah. So there's the obvious growth opportunities in China and India and economies like that. So we may see a bit of a shift in terms of that balance towards Asia Pacific, but at the moment, again, we're not quite seeing it yet. But it's certainly something for the future.
Okay. Turning to the audience. Any questions? Yes, sir. I can't throw you the catch box anymore, so I'm taking your microphone, James. I'm throwing myself at you.
Thank you. Excuse me, can you share with me how do you feel in terms of content, the trends, not only about Brexit, but also about this anti-globalization feeling that we're having in the different continents and countries? Because, I mean, in the long term, what will happen to these global gatherings that we have to discuss issues around the world if every country is now choosing to go its way?
That's interesting. It's kind of the wider perspective on Brexit. Everybody wants to go their own separate way. And James is nodding at me, so here's your microphone again.
So I think it's a really interesting point. However, I think that there are that sort of Trump voting, stop the world, I want to get off, anti-globalization type of consumer is probably not the sort of consumer that was flying around the world to go and attend meetings to share ideas at a global level. So my sense is that the big multinational corporations, the big global associations and trade events will continue to flourish because there is a global market for coming together and sharing ideas, whether internally within your company or externally as a trade association.
But might that market be diminishing because more people feel like, let's stay in our own country, go for our own good?
No, I don't. Well, I mean, I think if there is a market that exists right now for going around the world and sharing ideas, my instinct is that market continues. It probably still grows. If there is a market, and I just think it's the type of people that are doing that. What we have to, the biggest challenge we have in politics is that there is this polarization of society. There is those who are professionally qualified, who are in business, whose perspective is global and technological and are embracing that. And there are those in all of our countries that are not. So I don't think it's a very, very good point. It's the question of our time. But I don't think for the global events industry it makes any difference. For us as politicians, it absolutely does, because you have this increasingly interconnected and mobile global group of educated business people, and then you have people that are feeling left behind. Bridging that divide is my job. Taking advantage of the market that exists is yours.
Turning to the guys in the business, will your portfolio diminish because of deglobalization or not?
Well, Eduardo and I work for the same company, and we've changed our name to Global Events.
That doesn't mean that you have to agree per se.
No, but there is the... I think there's exactly the issue, as Eduardo says. I think politics are now driving all of us. Like I said earlier, things like Italy, the Italian elections, what's going to happen, or the Italian referendum that's happening, what's going to happen there is going to have a profound effect on what happens in Europe. If companies turn into themselves because they're driven by taxes or they're driven by whatever it is that they're driven by, I think it will have an effect, actually. I think all this non-global thinking and, turning back into, well, that was the argument about Britain and Brexit as well, going back to the good old days. I've no idea what the good old days were, but I am sure that these are better days, because these are better days. So I think just the general movement of what happens in politics will affect all business. It will affect all of our lives. It will affect everything that we do, I think.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, some interesting questions come in through Slido. I want to start with the most popular one. In your opinion, which city is growing fastest for events at the moment? being it with Brexit or without Brexit? Any clue?
London.
London.
Yeah. I mean, London does continue to grow for us. I mean, London has grown about 10% for us.
Yeah.
I guess the reverse of the question is also pertinent. So we've seen a massive drop in Paris, clearly, and obviously Turkey's had a terrible impact as well with some of the events that have happened there. Although they're both still fantastic destinations for events. So for me, it'd be more
basically, cities are more affected by terrorism,
by the safety and security issues that we're currently experiencing. But when you look at the safety and security, obviously London is on high alert. There's been the terrible events in Paris. There's been a lot in Belgium. There's been a lot there's been stuff in Germany. It's virtually every country in Europe now has got a high risk security situation.
Probably all meetings should go to Holland.
I think, well, and don't tempt fate. I think in general cities are growing. I think the market is actually growing, and the market is very buoyant. So cities like Barcelona, not because we're here, but there is an increased interest in that, or there's a maintained interest. Berlin is, London is, the Amsterdam is, and business in general for events is great.
It's growing.
Event companies like ours are doing very well. It's in general the industry is on a high. So I think there are waves of interest in areas, and
Okay.
Berlin.
I want to turn to the second one. They changed positions. So now we will go to the question: what about the political and national effect on principal booking outside of the UK for leaving?
Am I right in interpreting that as sort of that people...
Could we ask who sent in this question? Because we are not quite clear how to interpret the question. Nobody sent in the question? Okay. That's why it says anonymous.
I'm happy to take the next one.
So if that means sort of that maybe people might punish the United Kingdom for not being in the EU, that there's a sort of politically motivated decision over where to site your event, well, good luck to you. There's nothing the UK government can do to dissuade you from that. It would be an odd decision to make, because I suspect you're business people first and foremost, but if that's what motivates you, so be it.
Okay.
There's probably a job for you in the EU Commission.
We'll turn to the third one. What were your first thoughts when you found out about the result of the referendum?
Yeah, I got a slightly funny story on that. So I was here in Spain when that happened, and of course I went to bed thinking it wasn't going to happen, and woke up in the morning and went, oh dear, not quite in the same words, and was fairly disappointed. So I went down to the sales meeting that I was running for EMEA and walked into the room, and everybody turned around and said, "What have you done? Why did you do that?" It's like, sorry, that just wasn't me. But yeah, it was a very embarrassing Friday morning in Spain. So yeah, my first thoughts were, oh my God, I never thought that was going to happen. I guess I live in a bit of a bubble in London, and London was very, very pro-Remain, as I was, but then the rest of the country took us all by surprise.
Except Scotland, actually.
Yeah. Ben, your first thoughts when you...
Well, I thought because as you know, I'm Dutch British. I thought my poor mum, because she would have been devastated. I was devastated. She came just after the war, and she came to Holland. My father was in the RAF. They fought for something, and I had a feeling that this was all about, we've lost something now collectively. I really was devastated by it. I lived by the beach. I went onto the beach early morning, and I had a good think about it. I felt terrible, and I still feel terrible about it. I think it's awful, but we have to, we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I was the same. I'd voted to Remain. I genuinely thought that was the best thing for the UK. I was in real shock when the result came through, because earlier in the night, just like with the Trump election, actually, earlier in the night, it looked like it was going the other way. But the result itself wasn't the real moment. When the FTSE opened, and just billions of pounds just wiped off the UK's economy in seconds. That was pretty sobering. It then recovered over the course of the rest of the day, but that was a real moment. And then the Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street an hour later resigning, and you got I'm not choking up, ladies and gentlemen. But you just got a real sense that what had just happened was one of those seismic moments in the history of our nation. well, in the world, yeah, interesting. I mean, what's happened since? You know, who knows? Have we charted a path back to stability? My view is that we don't really yet know what the impact of Brexit is because we haven't yet showed our cards, although an MP's aide did a good job of trying to show us a bit of what was going on yesterday. So
but basically, I would like to see this panel happening in the polling industry because they have done a lousy job lately with polls. It will influence their industry. Yes, Ian.
So what's happened since is a really good point because there was a lot of doom and gloom merchants around, particularly the Dutch Prime Minister, who basically said the UK is finished in complete turmoil. And actually, the doom and gloom merchants haven't been proved right. The UK economy has remained quite strong. It's bounced back fairly quickly. Unemployment is at less than 5%. It's one of the strongest in Europe. And Theresa May is in a pretty strong position, which is very different to a lot of her counterparts around Europe. So, you know, it hasn't been as bad as what we expected on that morning when we woke up.
Question here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My question is the following. It seems that we are in a situation of turmoil right now, and it's not just European, it's worldwide. We have Trump as a new president. What's that going to mean? We still don't know. We fear, but we still don't know. But what I've been hearing recently is a lot of positive thinking because the economy is fine. I heard yesterday that in the end, Trump becoming a president is not that bad because, in fact, Wall Street is confident that he's going to be good for them, and so Wall Street went up. Is that enough? Because this turmoil that we're in, it's not economic. Of course it's economic, but it's social also. This insatisfaction, this dissatisfaction that people are feeling that are making them react, of course it's economic, but it's not in the Wall Street numbers. It's in the numbers below. So how do we deal with that long term? That's the thing. Are we going to deal with it long term? Or is it just Wall Street that's important?
No, I think market confidence is key. I don't think we are out of the woods yet. There's an interesting debate at the moment amongst economic editors in London over whether we're still in the sort of the downturn that began in 2008 and whether we're still trying to work our way properly out of that one, or whether actually we're coming into a new downturn. But there is a view that globally the economy is about to sort of take a turn for the worse. I don't think it'll be as bad as what happened 10 years ago or 9 years ago. But I do think that fundamentally there's too much debt out there in the global economy. There is still a very casual view amongst governments about how to set an economic policy that is good for the future, not just the current. And in an age where, it was an interesting point you made earlier on, that politics is following people. Actually, I think the real problem right now is that politics is devoid of ideas and leadership. It is entirely about populism. And you see what's going on in France, in Germany, in the UK, in the United States, in Italy. Actually, politicians are being increasingly drawn to that bright light that is populism, and that creates a real problem because that doesn't necessarily lead to sound long-term economic planning, investments in infrastructure, and all of that sort of thing. The fact that the markets remain confident is at the moment good enough to make sure that the economy stays all right. Consumers certainly still seem very confident, but I do think we're skating on thin ice.
Are there any? Yes, I will be right with you. If you have any more questions or remarks, there is one lady here, I'll be right with you. This is the moment to do so, because we are in the final 10 minutes of this session. If I could borrow your microphone again. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to refer to one thing. I mean, there's a lot of positive energy coming out from this panel, and I think that's one of the areas that will need to be addressed in terms of generational differences, because the younger generation, we grew up with, liberal thinking, traveling everywhere, and now 2016 just completely ruined any optimism we had for the world. And it's, Austrian elections are coming up next week. the French. It just seems that the liberal thinking, worldly thinking is diminishing, and we seem to be sort of losing power on these referendums and not being able to affect any change. And with these bubbles in London, we're referring to the US, the UK economy, unemployment remaining below 5. American unemployment was below 5 when Trump got elected. So he got elected despite good unemployment numbers. So it's just, there's this, I think the sort of the younger professional generation needs to be infused with some positive energy on their outlook, and this is more in terms of global travel than our industry specific, but we just seem to be losing. This 2016 is just not coming to an end.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a large number of what you might call the new generation major conglomerates now, major businesses now. 4 or 5 very major US companies that employ a lot of those younger people. And I can tell you their enthusiasm for travel is huge, and we are seeing growth from those companies globally. They're continuing to travel. Yes, again, they look very closely at safety and security, but I don't want to start reeling off names, but we've seen a major investment from one of those companies in London, and they've continued with that investment despite the Brexit. And they're going ahead with that massive investment, and they're employing people, and people want to work for those companies. So yeah, I don't know if I totally agree with your point.
Go ahead. Ben wanted to.
I do agree with your point in the sense that I think, but we are all collectively responsible for what's happening at the moment. So, and we grew up in this liberal society, which I think is hugely important. We are also the voice of the people. So our voice. This is a political point, but our voice is as important as the populists who are trying to push the masses. So use your voice.
And I think one of the concerns of the younger people is they have become disillusioned with politics. A little bit back to what James was saying. I think it's the politician's job to try and connect with those people and make it real again for them. I mean, a lot of people that I speak to of the younger generation, of which I'm obviously one, they're not really interested in the politics. They mention it, but they're much more interested in global trade. They're much more interested, obviously, in technology and where that's going, and that's what excites them.
I say we are like the world's crappiest Westlife tribute band, aren't we? So it's an interesting point, but we do still live in those liberal democracies that allow the will of the people to be expressed by doing crazy things and changing government because that's what people want. And there is, I don't know that Trump arriving in the White House or the UK leaving the European Union actually changes anything in terms of the opportunities for young people. Within the European context, we're used to being able to sort of interrail all over the continent without showing our passport once. That's great. But it's only marginally more convenient than it is for the Aussies or the New Zealand or the South Africans or the Americans who come over here in their millions to travel in just the same way without the same advantage in terms of what their passport can do. There is a temptation to say the end of the world is nigh. This is a big, big political shock to happen for people that are in the very start of their careers. And I understand that completely. And I've just had to find myself on a number of occasions, whether it's sitting with graduate event professionals or people who are in college or university in my own constituency, and just say, look, for all that you instinctively think it's a disaster, what's changed? Look on the graduate recruitment websites, and all of the big companies are still running their grad schemes at the same level they were a year ago. Look in the local paper, look online at the job sites. All of the employment opportunities are still there. There's still the opportunities to travel, not just within the EU, but around the world. And nothing has changed in that regard. Yes, there is a growing trend towards populism, towards isolationism, protectionism, because people are concerned that the world is getting wealthier and that wealth is not being shared with them. We're a long way from Brexit now. But that is the challenge of our time. And what we need to do is actually, for the younger generation, those who are in work and excited for their future, to find their voice and challenge that view that isolationism, protectionism, stopping the world is not the way forward, and that embracing a different future is. But the liberal democracy we live in gives you the chance to make that case and to win an election and to run the place.
Thank you, thank you.
One comment on that. A woman's right to choose what she does with her body affects the way she's going to live her life.
Okay.
And having a president like Trump in power changes that reality for women. It's a small segment of what you're saying. Those choices are very much affecting the way our lives are going to go.
Accepted.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, you are right, James. We are a long way from Brexit by now. And that is my take on this session. It's interesting because we started off with Brexit and we ended up with the general turmoil in the world and the future of the world and the youngsters. I love that. It says something about what Brexit really is. I would like to ask the panel to finalize this session with some final thoughts on Brexit. So the circle is around it. Any final thoughts on Brexit? Ian?
Yeah, so I think the circle is rounded, of course, but Brexit cannot be looked at in isolation by itself. It's connected with all the other events that are going on around the world. And that's why I feel that within the events industry, we will continue to prosper. I think we'll see good growth for 2017, a little bit more uncertainty around 2018, and people and companies will continue to meet face to face. So for me, finishing off, I don't think Brexit is going to have a major negative impact on our industry.
Thank you. Ben?
I would say hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and take it, the best way we can.
Okay. Finally, James?
I would say that the UK is acutely aware of the challenge that we have presented to you as an industry. We in Parliament and government are working very hard to make sure that we continue to be the global centre for business, and with that, therefore, the centre for events. You will all be very, very welcome indeed. Bring your events to London or any one of the brilliant UK provincial cities at any point in the next decade. Anybody bringing an event with more than 5,000 delegates gets a free tour of the House of Commons with me, and that's a deal. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the left to the right, thank you please. James Heappey, Ben Goedegebuure, Ian Cummings. Enjoy the rest of your stay. Hope to see you in another session. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Yes, thanks.